The sunrise brought with it the final countdown to extinction. Amy Rodriguez's instruments showed massive magma movement building toward the eruption that would end everything. The air temperature inside the habitats was rising beyond safe levels as the planet's surface heated up around them. Emergency power was down to critical levels and would fail completely within hours. Zektar expected the humans to spend their final morning in quiet contemplation or peaceful acceptance. Instead, he found them gathered around Alex Chen, a young mining engineer who was sketching diagrams on a damaged wall panel. "So here's what I'm thinking," Alex was saying to the assembled group. "The main volcanic system is building pressure in 3 primary chambers underneath us. When it blows, it's going to take out everything on the surface. We know that part," Jake Murphy said patiently. "What we don't know is how that helps us." Alex grinned with the kind of excitement that should have been impossible under their circumstances. "What if we don't wait for it to blow naturally? What if we help it along?" "Help a volcano erupt?" Kate Williams asked. "That sounds like the opposite of a survival strategy." "Not the main chambers," Alex explained, pointing to his rough diagrams. "The secondary lava tubes that run from the mining area to the old volcanic vents on the far side of the mountain range. If we can create a controlled explosion in the right place, we might be able to open a pathway through the tubes." The group fell silent as they processed this information. Zektar felt his mind reeling at the audacity of what the young human was suggesting. "You want to blow up the mining equipment to create an escape route through active lava tubes," and Chris Taylor said, slowly. "Exactly," Alex replied. "The tubes are partially blocked by old lava flows, but they're structurally sound. If we can clear the blockages and create a pathway, we could travel through the volcanic system itself and come out on the safe side of the mountain. The safe side that's only safe until the main eruption happens," Ryan Foster pointed out. "Right, but the main eruption should push most of the lava flow away from that area, at least for a few hours, long enough for a rescue ship to reach us." Paul Henderson was studying the diagrams with a thoughtful expression. "What are the odds that this would actually work?" Alex hesitated for a moment. "Honestly, maybe 5%. The explosion might collapse the tubes completely. The lava flow might change direction and cook us all. The route might be too unstable to traverse safely." 5%, Ben Carter repeated. "Those are terrible odds." "They're better than 0%, Alex replied, "which is what we have if we stay here." Jake looked around at the assembled colonists. "So we're talking about a plan that has a 95% chance of killing us all instantly instead of waiting for the volcano to do it slowly." "That's about right," Alex confirmed. "I like it," Lisa Barnes said with a grin. "At least we'd be doing something instead of just sitting here." "It's completely insane," Nina Brooks added. "But it's the kind of insane that might actually work." Zektar could not believe what he was hearing. These humans were seriously considering a plan that would almost certainly result in their immediate death. And they were talking about it like it was an exciting adventure. "This is madness," he said to Jake. "You cannot seriously be considering this suicide mission." "Why not?" Jake replied. "We're dead anyway. At least this way we go out trying. But the odds are impossible." "Impossible odds are kind of our specialty," Susan Watts said with a laugh. "Besides, 5% is practically a guarantee in human terms." The group voted unanimously to attempt Alex's impossible plan. Even the families with children supported the decision. Even the elderly colonists who would have the hardest time traveling through dangerous volcanic tubes wanted to try. Zektar watched in amazement as the humans immediately began organizing for their desperate escape attempt. There was no panic, no arguing about who should lead or who should make decisions. They simply started working together with the same calm efficiency they had shown throughout the disaster. Danny, Kim, and Julie. Warren took charge of preparing the explosive charges needed to clear the lava tube blockages. They would have to use the colony's remaining power, cells and mining explosives, to create a controlled detonation that would open the pathway without destroying it completely, so we need enough power to blast through several tons of hardened lava, Danny explained to his team. "But not so much that we collapse the entire tube system." "How do we calculate the right amount?" asked one of the miners. "Very carefully," Julie replied, "and with a lot of prayers to whatever gods watch over crazy humans." Chris Taylor and Kate Williams organized teams to prepare the colonists for the dangerous journey through the volcanic tubes. They would have to travel through areas with extreme heat, toxic gases, and unstable geological conditions. Everyone would need protective gear and emergency breathing apparatus. The temperature in the tubes could reach over 200 degrees. Chris warned the group. The air will be unbreathable without filters, and the route will probably be unstable, so we'll need to move fast. How fast? Asked Sam Miller's mother. Faster than we've ever moved before, Kate replied honestly. But we'll all be moving together. Amy Rodriguez was working frantically to send emergency signals through the atmospheric interference caused by the volcanic activity. If they managed to survive the journey through the lava tubes, they would need rescue ships waiting on the far side of the mountain. I'm broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, Amy reported. If there are any ships in this system, they'll know we're attempting an escape. But I can't guarantee anyone will receive the message. So we might make it through the tubes only to find no rescue waiting, Paul Henderson observed. That's the plan, Amy confirmed with a grin. Hope for the best and prepare for disappointment. Even facing impossible odds, the humans continued to joke and maintain their optimism. Zektar began to understand that this was not just stress relief or psychological denial. This was how humans approached every challenge, whether large or small. The preparation work continued through the morning as the volcanic activity increased around them. The ground shook constantly and the air filled with ash and burning debris. The colony's remaining structures groaned under the stress of continuous seismic activity. Tony Garcia, the demolitions expert, was working with Danny and Julie to place explosive charges at carefully calculated points along the blocked lava tubes. The work required him to enter areas where the heat was already approaching lethal levels. Garcia, what's your status? Chris radioed to him during one of his trips into the danger zone. Well, I'm sweating like a politician at a truth convention, Tony replied, but the charges are in place. When we blow these babies, we'll either have a nice clear pathway or a really impressive crater. Let's hope for the pathway, Chris replied. Hope is what we do best, Tony confirmed. As noon approached, everything was ready for their desperate escape attempt. The explosive charges were positioned and connected to remote detonators. The colonists were organized into travel groups with protective equipment and emergency supplies. Emergency signals were broadcasting continuously to any potential rescue ships. Jake Murphy gathered everyone in the main recreation area for what might be their final meeting as a community. Well, folks, he said, we've reached the point where we either do something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, possibly both at the same time. Those are my favorite kind of plans, Ben Carter said with a smile. So here's how this is going to work. Jake continued. When we detonate the charges, we'll have maybe 30 minutes before the main volcanic eruption begins. We need to get everyone through the lava tubes and to the extraction point in that time. What if the tubes collapse? Asked one of the colonists. Then we'll have a really short trip, Jake replied. But if they hold, we'll have the adventure of several lifetimes. And if there are no rescue ships waiting, then we'll figure out what to do next when we get there. That's what humans do. The group voted one final time to proceed with the plan. Once again, the decision was unanimous. Men, women, and children who should have been terrified were instead excited about their chance to escape. Through active volcanic tubes, Julie Warren took her position at the detonation controls while Danny Kim monitored the geological sensors. The rest of the colonists gathered at the entrance to the mining area where the cleared tubes would hopefully provide their escape route. Explosive charges armed and ready, Julie reported. Geological readings show optimal conditions for controlled detonation. All personnel in position, Chris confirmed. We're as ready as we're ever going to be. Jake looked around at the faces of his people. They were dirty, tired, and facing almost certain death, but they were also smiling, holding hands, and supporting each other with the same spirit that had carried them through the entire disaster. Any last words before we blow up a mountain? Jake asked. Yeah, said Lisa Barnes. This is either going to be really cool or really hot. Everyone laughed. Even facing the moment of truth, even knowing they would probably die in the next few minutes, these remarkable humans found reasons to smile and joke together. Julie, Jake said into his radio, light it up. The explosion was unlike anything Zektar had ever experienced. The ground heaved and bucked like a living thing. The morning of the second day brought news that should have broken the human spirit completely. Amy Rodriguez's instrument showed that the main volcanic system was building toward an eruption that would destroy everything within 50 kilometers. The backup power systems had failed during the night. The emergency food supplies were running low. The air filtration systems were struggling against increasing levels of toxic gas. Zektar expected to find the humans in despair. He expected crying, panic, and the complete breakdown of their social order. Instead, he found them in the recreation area having what they called a breakfast meeting. Jake Murphy was distributing the remaining coffee rations while Nina Brooks checked on colonists who had breathing difficulties from the volcanic gases. Paul Henderson was organizing work teams to continue repairs on essential systems. Everyone moved with the same calm efficiency they had shown from the beginning. "So the situation report," Jake announced to the gathered group. "The good news is that we're all still breathing. The bad news is that we probably won't be breathing much longer." "How much longer?" asked Kate Williams. "Amy's calculations show about 18 hours before the main eruption," Jake replied. "Give or take a few hours for mathematical error and wishful thinking. 18 hours. Zektar felt his scales go cold with the certainty of death. These humans had 18 hours left to live, and they were discussing it like a minor scheduling problem. "Well," said Chris Taylor, "that's not much time. What should we do with it?" "I vote for a party," said Lisa Barnes. "If we're going out, we might as well go out in style." "A party," Zektar repeated in disbelief. "You want to have a party while your world is ending?" "Why not?" Ryan Foster replied with a grin. "We've got nothing else planned for today." The entire group burst into laughter. Even the children seemed to think this was a wonderful idea. Zektar watched in amazement as the humans began planning what they called their end of the world celebration. Susan Watts volunteered to organize entertainment using the colony's limited power reserves. Danny Kim said he could rig the sound system to play music throughout the remaining habitable areas. Ben Carter offered to coordinate food distribution so everyone could share their remaining supplies. "This is madness," Zektar said to Jake. "You should be trying to find a way to escape. You should be working on emergency shelters. You should be doing something other than planning a party." Jake looked at him with a patient expression. "Zektar, we've tried everything. The evacuation ships are destroyed. The emergency shelters can't protect us from a volcanic eruption this size. The rescue signals can't get through the atmospheric interference. We've done all the rational things." "So you give up?" Zektar asked. "No," Jake replied. "We choose how we want to spend our last day. And we choose to spend it together, as a community, doing what humans do best. Which is what? Taking care of each other and refusing to let circumstances steal our joy." Zektar could not understand this logic. On his world, warriors faced death with stoic dignity and formal rituals. They did not have parties. They did not laugh. They prepared their spirits for the afterlife with serious meditation and prayer, but the humans were already setting up their impossible celebration. Amy Rodriguez was using her communications equipment to play music from the colony's entertainment database. The sound of human songs filled the habitats, somehow making the smoking, damaged buildings feel more alive. Nina Brooks and Paul Henderson were organizing the remaining food into a communal feast. They set up tables in the main recreation area and invited everyone to contribute whatever they had left. The result was a strange mixture of emergency rations, personal food supplies, and improvised dishes made from mining camp ingredients. The children seemed especially excited about the party. 8-year-old Sam Miller was helping to decorate the recreation area with drawings and handmade banners. His artwork showed stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, completely ignoring the volcanic destruction happening outside. "Sam," Zektar asked the boy, "are you not afraid?" Sam looked up at him with bright eyes. "My mom says there's no point being scared about things you can't change. She says it's better to be happy while you can, but you might die today." "Yeah," Sam said cheerfully, "but I'm not dead yet, and this party is going to be really fun." The simple wisdom of a human child left Zektar speechless. These people had somehow taught their young to face mortality with acceptance and joy. They had created a culture that valued happiness over fear, even in the face of certain death. As the day progressed, the party took on a life of its own. Someone found an old deck of human playing cards and started a game that quickly involved half the colony. Others began sharing stories about their lives, their families, and their dreams for the future that would never come. Chris Taylor told funny stories about his early days as a mining engineer, including several disasters that were almost as bad as their current situation. Kate Williams shared memories of her children back on Earth and made everyone laugh with descriptions of their latest school projects. The volcanic activity continued to increase around them. The ground shook constantly and the air grew thicker with ash and toxic gases. But inside the habitats, the humans had created an island of warmth and community that seemed to exist outside the laws of physics. Danny Kim managed to get the entertainment system working at full capacity. He rigged speakers throughout the colony and created what he called a planetary dance party. The music ranged from classical human compositions to popular songs that everyone knew by heart. People began dancing in the recreation area. Families held each other close and swayed to the music. Young couples spun around the room like they were at a wedding instead of a wake. Even the older colonists joined in, laughing as they moved to rhythms that spoke of life and joy. Zektar found himself sitting alone in a corner, watching this impossible scene. His military training told him that these humans were suffering from some kind of collective mental breakdown. No rational species would behave this way in the face of certain death. But the more he watched, the more he began to see something else. These humans were not denying their situation. They talked openly about their impending death. They acknowledged the hopelessness of their circumstances. They simply refused to let those facts control their emotional response. Nina Brooks approached him with a plate of food and a gentle smile. "You look confused," she said, sitting down beside him. "I'm confused," Zektar admitted. "Your people are about to die and you are celebrating. This makes no sense to me." "What would make sense to you?" Nina asked. "Dignity, acceptance, preparation for the afterlife, not this chaos of noise and laughter." Nina nodded thoughtfully. "We're doing all of those things. We're accepting our situation. We're preparing our spirits. We're maintaining our dignity as human beings. We're just doing it in a way that honors who we are. And who are you? We're the species that laughs in the dark. We're the people who sing when the world is ending. We're humans and we refuse to go quietly into that good night." She quoted something that sounded like human poetry. The words carried a weight of meaning that spoke to something deep in the human spirit. Zektar began to understand that this party was not chaos or denial. It was a statement of defiance against the universe itself. As evening approached, the celebration reached new heights of impossible joy. Someone had found a collection of musical instruments and formed an impromptu band. The music was far from professional, but it carried an emotional power that filled the entire colony with warmth. Ryan Foster was teaching children how to play simple games while their parents shared drinks and talked about their lives. Lisa Barnes was showing teenagers how to dance to different types of human music. Ben Carter was telling stories about his military service that had everyone alternating between laughter and respectful silence. The most remarkable thing was how the humans took care of each other throughout the celebration. When someone became emotional thinking about loved ones they would never see again, others gathered around to offer comfort. When the elderly or injured became tired, younger colonists helped them find comfortable places to rest. Paul Henderson gave a speech that somehow captured the spirit of what Zektar was witnessing. "We came to this planet to dig for precious metals," Paul said to the gathered crowd. "But what we found was something more valuable. We found each other. We found community. We found the courage to face the unknown together." The crowd cheered and applauded. Children climbed onto their parents' shoulders. Couples held hands and smiled through tears. Friends embraced like they were saying goodbye, which of course they were. "So tonight," Paul continued, "we celebrate what it means to be human. We celebrate our capacity for joy in the midst of sorrow. We celebrate our refusal to let fear define our final hours. We celebrate the fact that we lived, we loved, and we made a difference in each other's lives." The applause was thunderous. People were crying and laughing at the same time. The music swelled and the dancing resumed with even more energy than before. Zektar felt something shift inside his chest as he watched these remarkable beings choose hope over despair. Susan Watts found him near midnight as the party continued around them. "What do you think of humans now?" she asked with a tired but genuine smile. The ground started shaking at exactly 1400 hours on Zektar's 7th day at the colony. At first it was just a small tremor that made the coffee cups rattle in the main habitat. Jake Murphy looked up from his daily reports and made a comment about the planet having indigestion. The other humans laughed and continued their work like nothing had happened. Zektar felt his scales prickle with warning. His species had evolved on a seismically active world, and he knew the signs of serious geological disturbance. This was not a minor tremor. This was the beginning of something much worse. Should we not check the seismic readings? Zektar asked Jake. Amy's on it. Jake replied casually. She'll let us know if we need to worry. Amy Rodriguez was indeed checking her instruments, but she was also humming some human tune while she worked. When the readings came through, she called out to the group without any apparent concern. Well, that's interesting, Amy said. We've got some serious activity building up in the main volcanic system. Looks like the mountain is having a bit of a mood swing. How serious? Kate Williams asked from across the room. On a scale of 1 to we're all going to die. I'd say we're at about a 6, Amy replied with a grin. Everyone laughed. Even the children in the colony's small school seemed to think this was funny. Zektar could not understand how they could joke about potential death. On his world, a seismic rating of 6 would trigger immediate evacuation procedures. The shaking got stronger over the next hour. Equipment began sliding around the workspace. The lights flickered as the power grid struggled to maintain stability. Through the habitat windows, Zektar could see steam and smoke, rising from several volcanic vents. Across the mining area, Lisa Barnes came running in from the extraction site with orange dust covering her, clothes and a big smile on her face. The mountain just told me something really important, she announced to the group. What did it say? Ryan Foster asked. It said we should probably get out of here pretty soon, Lisa replied. But it was very polite about it. More laughter. Always more laughter. Zektar wanted to scream at them to take this seriously. Could they not see that their world was about to explode around them? The first major quake hit at 15:30 hours. The ground heaved like a living thing and threw everyone to the floor. Ceiling panels fell and emergency lights began flashing. The main power grid failed and backup systems kicked in with a low humming sound. Zektar expected panic. He expected screaming and chaos as the humans finally realized their danger. Instead, Ben Carter helped everyone to their feet and made a joke about the planet trying to do some redecorating. Well, that was exciting, Jake said as he dusted himself off. Amy, what's our status? Amy was back at her instruments checking damage reports from across the colony. Her console was flickering and sparking, but she seemed completely calm. Main reactor took a hit, she reported. We're running on backup power. The mining equipment is mostly offline, and the spaceport just called to say that our evacuation ships are now very flat pancakes. All of them? Kate asked. Every single one, Amy confirmed. The landing pad kind of collapsed on top of them. There was a moment of silence as this information sank in. They were trapped on a planet that was experiencing major volcanic activity. Their ships were destroyed. Their main power was failing. Any reasonable species would be preparing for death. Jake Murphy started laughing. Well, he said, I guess we're staying for dinner after all. The entire group burst into laughter. Even the children giggled like this was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Zektar felt his mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. Are you all insane? He finally managed to say. Your evacuation ships are destroyed. You are trapped on a planet that is about to erupt. How can you be laughing? Because crying won't fix the ships, Kate replied with a smile. And besides, we've got work to do. She was right about the work. Within minutes, the humans had organized themselves into repair teams. They moved with calm efficiency that seemed impossible under the circumstances. No panic, no arguments, no time wasted on fear or despair. Chris Taylor led a team into the damaged mining tunnels to check for trapped workers. The tunnels were filling with toxic gases and the structural supports were failing. Any sane person would declare the area too dangerous to enter. Okay, people, Chris announced to his team. We're going into what I like to call the death maze. Stay together, breathe through your filters, and try not to touch anything that's glowing. What if everything is glowing? Asked one of the miners. Then we'll have a really colorful rescue mission, Chris replied. They disappeared into the smoking tunnels while making jokes about underground tourism and extreme cave diving. Zektar could not believe that humans would risk their lives with such casual bravery. The volcanic activity continued to increase throughout the afternoon. More quakes shook the colony and the air filled with ash and sulfur. The backup power systems began failing one by one. Communication with the outside galaxy was cut off when the main transmission array collapsed. Amy Rodriguez managed to maintain contact with the mining teams through short-range radio. She coordinated rescue efforts while keeping everyone updated on the deteriorating situation. Her reports were accurate and professional, but she delivered them with the same cheerful tone she might use to describe the weather. Team 3, you've got a lava flow heading toward your position. She radioed to Chris Taylor's group. You might want to wrap up your sightseeing tour and head for higher ground. Copy that, Amy, Chris responded. We found 2 more survivors down here. They're complaining about the heat, but otherwise they're in good shape. Outstanding, Amy replied. Try to bring them back before they get too crispy. Even in the middle of a disaster, the humans continued to joke and maintain their impossible optimism. Zektar watched them work and began to realize that this was not just stress-induced madness. This was how humans always responded to crisis. Paul Henderson, the colony administrator, took charge of organizing the civilian population. He moved families to the most stable buildings and distributed emergency supplies. His calm leadership kept everyone focused on survival tasks instead of panic. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul announced to the gathered colonists, we appear to be having what the insurance companies would call an act of planetary violence. The good news is that our premium payments are current. People actually laughed at this. Children who should have been terrified were giggling at adult humor they probably did not even understand. The human ability to find comedy and tragedy seemed to be a species-wide trait. Medical officer Nina Brooks set up a treatment center in the main habitat. She worked on injured miners while chatting casually about the unusual nature of volcano-related injuries. Her patients smiled and joked even while receiving treatment for burns and breathing difficulties. Doc, am I going to live? Asked a miner with a badly burned arm. Probably, Nina replied while cleaning his wound, unless you die from embarrassment about getting injured by a grumpy mountain. I can live with that, the miner said. The mountain started it. By evening, the situation had become truly desperate. The main volcanic system was building toward a massive eruption. Surface temperatures were rising to dangerous levels. The colony's life support systems were failing as power continued to deteriorate. Zektar found himself helping with rescue operations despite his confusion about human behavior. His natural strength and heat resistance made him useful for recovering equipment and supplies from damaged areas. The humans welcomed his help without question and treated him like part of their team. Danny Kim, the colony's engineer, was working frantically to keep essential systems running. He rerouted power from non-critical areas and made temporary repairs to damaged equipment. His workspace was filled with sparking electronics and improvised solutions. How much longer can we maintain life support? Jake asked him. With current power levels, maybe 6 hours, Danny replied. But I've got some ideas for extending that. Legal ideas or the kind that void our insurance, and Jake asked. Definitely the insurance voiding kind, Danny said with a grin. The fun kind. Even while facing certain death, these humans continued to make jokes and maintain their team spirit. They worked together with a coordination that seemed impossible for such an individualistic species. No one complained. No one gave up. No one stopped believing they could find a way to survive. Susan Watts, the maintenance chief, organized teams to seal damaged areas and protect critical equipment. She moved through the colony like a general commanding troops, but her orders were delivered with humor and encouragement instead of military authority. Okay, people, she called out to her teams. We're playing a game called Keep the Humans Alive. The rules are simple. Fix everything, ignore the explosions, and don't let the lava win. As night fell, the volcanic activity reached critical levels. The ground shook constantly and the air filled with ash and burning debris. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows through the smoke-filled habitats. Any normal species would be preparing for the end. The humans gathered in the main recreation area and began what they called an emergency planning session. But instead of despair and panic, Zektar heard laughter and conversation. They were sharing food and drinks like this was a normal social gathering. Zektar stepped off the transport ship and felt the strange gravity of Kepler 442b pull at his thick scales. The planet was smaller than his homeworld, but the air was breathable for both his kind and the humans. He looked around at the mining colony and felt confused. Where were the defense towers? Where were the energy shields? Where were the weapons that should protect any settlement this far from civilization? The human mining colony looked like a collection of metal boxes scattered across orange rocks. Steam rose from holes in the ground where the humans dug for precious metals. The building seemed thin and weak compared to the fortress cities of the Velkari Republic. A small spaceport held 3 cargo ships and 2 tiny fighters that looked more like toys than real military craft. Jake Murphy walked toward him with a big smile on his face. The human operations chief was shorter than Zektar and had no visible armor or weapons. His skin looked soft and pink without any natural protection. Jake held out his hand in the strange human greeting ritual. "Welcome to Paradise Rock," Jake said with a laugh. "That's what we call this place because it's about as far from paradise as you can get." Zektar did not understand why Jake was laughing. This was supposed to be a serious military exchange program. The Velkari Republic wanted to learn about human defense strategies. But Jake seemed to treat everything like a joke. "I am Observer Zektar of the Velkari Military Command," Zektar said in his formal voice. "I am here to study your security methods." Jake laughed again. "Security methods. That's a good one. Come on. Let me show you around our Fortress of Doom." As they walked through the colony, Zektar saw more humans working in the mining areas. They wore simple clothes and basic safety gear. No combat armor, no enhanced strength suits, no energy weapons. Lisa Barnes was operating a large drilling machine near a volcanic vent that would have terrified most species. She was singing some human song and occasionally stopped to tell jokes to her work crew. "Isn't that dangerous?" Zektar asked Jake. "The volcanic activity could increase at any moment." "Sure could," Jake said with another smile. "But Lisa's been doing this for 5 years. She says the mountain talks to her. When it starts grumbling too much, she moves the operation." Zektar could not believe what he was hearing. These humans were using intuition and jokes instead of proper scientific monitoring. They had no backup plans, no evacuation procedures. They just trusted one human's ability to listen to a mountain. Ryan Foster waved at them from across the mining pit. He was covered in orange dust and grinning like he was having the best day of his life. Ryan operated the dangerous extraction equipment that pulled rare metals from deep underground. The machines were old and made loud noises that suggested they might break down at any moment. "Hey, Jake," Ryan called out. "The number 3 extractor is making that funny noise again." "The
one that sounds like your ex-wife or the one that sounds like a dying space?"
whale, Jake called back. "Definitely the ex-wife," Ryan replied. "Should I keep running it?" "Until it actually explodes," Jake said. "Then we'll fix it." Both humans laughed like this was the funniest conversation in the galaxy. Zektar felt his scales tighten with anxiety. On a Velkari world, equipment failure was treated as a serious threat. These humans seemed to enjoy the danger. They continued the tour and met Kate Williams, the mining supervisor. She was a small human female who seemed to be in charge of the most dangerous operations. Kate was currently planning a new dig site right next to an active lava flow. The heat signatures show good mineral deposits about 50 meters down. Kate explained to her team. "The lava should stay in its current path for at least another month." "Should," said one of the miners. "That's reassuring." "Hey, if the lava changes direction, we'll get really warm really fast," Kate said with a grin. "Think of it as natural heating for the workspace." The entire team laughed. Zektar wanted to run back to his ship. These humans were planning to dig toward an active volcano, and they were making jokes about it. This was not military strategy. This was collective insanity. Security Chief Ben Carter joined them for lunch in the main habitat building. Zektar hoped to finally meet a human who took security seriously. Ben was a large human with scars on his arms and a serious expression. Surely he would understand proper defensive protocols. "So, Zektar," Ben said as they sat down to eat, "Jake tells me you want to learn about our security systems." "Yes," Zektar said with relief. "Finally someone who understands the importance of proper defense." Ben nodded seriously. "Well, our main defense system is called Hope." "Hope," Zektar repeated slowly. "Yeah, we hope nothing too bad happens," Ben said. Then his serious expression broke and he started laughing. "But we also have 2 security cameras that work most of the time, and a really loud alarm that scares away the local wildlife." Even Ben was making jokes about security. Zektar realized that no human on this colony took anything seriously. They lived on a dangerous planet with minimal protection and treated every threat like entertainment. During the afternoon, Zektar watched the humans work. They moved heavy equipment with casual efficiency. They made repairs while chatting and laughing. They handled dangerous chemicals while telling stories. Every task that should have required intense focus and multiple safety protocols was treated like a social gathering. Amy Rodriguez, the communications officer, was monitoring potential threats from space while reading what appeared to be a humorous story to her colleagues. When an asteroid alert came through, she calmly noted its trajectory and announced that it would miss the planet by a comfortable margin. "Define comfortable?" asked one of the miners. "Well, it won't actually hit us," Amy replied. "That's about as comfortable as it gets out here." More laughter. Always more laughter. Zektar began to wonder if humans had some kind of medical condition that made them unable to feel fear properly. As evening came, the humans gathered in their recreation area. They shared food and drinks and told stories about their day. They talked about equipment failures like they were amusing anecdotes. They discussed the dangerous mining conditions like they were describing a pleasant hobby. Jake found Zektar sitting alone, trying to understand what he had observed. "First day observations," Jake asked. "What do you think of our operation?" "I think you are all insane," Zektar said honestly. "You live in constant danger and treat it like entertainment. You have no proper defenses, no backup plans, no respect for the threats around you." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But we're still here, aren't we? For now," Zektar said. "But what happens when something really bad occurs? What happens when your luck runs out?" Jake smiled that strange human smile again. "I guess we'll find out together." That night, Zektar lay in his quarters thinking about the humans he had met. They were physically weak compared to most galactic species. They had no natural armor or enhanced abilities. Their technology was basic and their defenses were minimal. By every logical measure, they should not be able to survive in this environment. Yet they were not just surviving. They were thriving. They were happy. They found joy in situations that would terrify warriors from his own species. Zektar could not understand how this was possible. He began writing his first report to Velkari Command. How could he explain that the humans seemed to have no fear, that they treated mortal danger like a daily amusement, that they relied on hope and humor instead of proper military protocols? His superior officers would think he was suffering from some kind of mental breakdown. They would never believe that an entire human colony operated on the principle of laughing at death and hoping for the best. But Zektar had seen it with his own eyes. These soft, weak, illogical humans were doing something that defied everything he knew about survival and military strategy. Tomorrow he would continue observing. Maybe he would begin to understand what made humans so different from every other species in the galaxy. Maybe he would learn why they could smile in the face of danger and find humor in the midst of chaos. Or maybe he would just watch them all die in some preventable disaster while laughing about it. The journey through the lava tubes was like traveling through the digestive system of a living planet. The walls glowed red with heat and steam rose from cracks in the volcanic rock. The air was thick with sulfur and ash despite their breathing filters. The ground beneath their feet was so hot that their boots began to smoke and melt. But the humans kept moving forward with the same impossible determination they had shown throughout the entire disaster. Parents carried children on their shoulders while singing songs to keep them calm. Elderly colonists were helped along by younger adults who shared their water and encouraged them with gentle humor. "Well, this is definitely the most interesting commute I've ever had," Jake Murphy said as the group navigated a particularly narrow section of the tube. "At least there's no traffic," replied Amy Rodriguez, who was helping guide the group using thermal readings from her portable scanner. Even here, in the bowels of an active volcano, the humans found reasons to joke and support each other. Zektar followed close behind, his heat-resistant scales making him better suited for these conditions than the soft-skinned humans who should not have been able to survive this environment at all. 20 minutes into their escape, disaster struck again. A section of the tube roof collapsed, blocking their forward progress and trapping the rear half of the group behind tons of fallen rock. The impact knocked several people to the ground and filled the air with choking dust. Joe Parker had been helping Susan Watts navigate the difficult terrain when the collapse occurred. He found himself on the wrong side of the rockfall with no way to rejoin the main group. Through the settling dust, he could hear his friends calling out to check if everyone was okay. "Joe, are you hurt?" Chris Taylor shouted through the barrier of stone. "Just my pride," Joe called back. "But I think I'm going to be late for the reunion party." The situation was clear to everyone. The collapse had created an unstable area that could bring down the entire tube system if disturbed. Any attempt to clear the blockage would probably kill everyone in both groups. Joe Parker was going to die alone in a volcanic tube while his friends escaped to safety. "Joe." Jake Murphy's voice came through the rocks. "We're going to try to dig you out." "No, you're not," Joe replied firmly. "You've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole system comes down. You get everyone else to safety." "We don't leave people behind," Kate Williams called out. "You're not leaving me behind," Joe said. "I'm staying behind by choice. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on this mountain and make sure it doesn't cause any more trouble." Zektar could hear the emotion in the voices on both sides of the rockfall. These humans were being forced to abandon one of their own, and it was breaking their hearts. But Joe Parker was making the choice easy for them by refusing to let them risk everyone else's life for his sake. "Joe," Susan Watts said, her voice thick with tears. "Thank you." "Thank me by getting out of here alive," Joe replied. "And tell my kids back on Earth that Daddy went out like a hero. Or at least like someone who wasn't completely stupid." Even facing certain death alone, Joe Parker was trying to comfort his friends with humor. Zektar felt something profound shift in his understanding of human nature as he listened to this impossible display of courage and selflessness. The group had to keep moving. The main volcanic eruption was building toward its climax, and they had only minutes left to reach the extraction point. But every step forward meant leaving Joe Parker further behind, and the weight of that sacrifice hung heavy over everyone. Helen Gray was a planetary scientist who had joined the colony to study the unique geology of Kepler 442b. She had been documenting the volcanic activity throughout the disaster and had become invaluable for predicting safe routes through the unstable terrain. As they approached another dangerous section where falling debris threatened the group, Helen made a decision that epitomized everything Zektar had learned about human nature. She positioned herself at the most vulnerable point and used her own body to shield others from the falling rocks. "Helen, get back," shouted Chris Taylor as he saw what she was doing. "Someone needs to spot for falling rocks," Helen called back. "I've got the best view from here." "It's too dangerous. Danger is my middle name," Helen replied with a laugh. "Actually, it's Marie, but danger sounds more dramatic." A massive chunk of volcanic rock broke free from the ceiling and fell directly toward a group of children who were struggling to keep up with the adults. Helen threw herself forward and took the impact on her back, deflecting the debris away from the young ones. The rock crushed her legs and pinned her to the ground, but the children were safe. Helen looked up at the group with a smile that somehow managed to be both pained and genuinely happy. "Well, that was exciting," she said, "but I think I'm going to need to sit this one out for a while." The group rushed to help her, but it was immediately clear that Helen could not be moved without causing injuries that would kill her. Like Joe Parker before her, she had sacrificed herself to save others. And like Joe, she was going to face death with humor and grace. "Helen." Nina Brooks knelt beside her and checked her injuries. "We can't leave you here." "Yes, you can," Helen replied. "And you will. Because that's what I need you to do. There has to be something we can do." "There is," Helen said with that impossible human smile. "You can remember that I got to be part of something amazing. I got to see people take care of each other when everything else fell apart. I got to see humans being the best version of themselves." She looked directly at Zektar. "And I got to help show someone from another world what we're really made of." As the group prepared to continue their escape, Helen gave them final words of encouragement. "Go be heroes," she said. "Go prove that humans don't give up, don't give in, and don't let the universe tell them what's possible." The final stretch of their journey took them through a section where the lava tubes opened into a series of natural caves. The temperature was still extreme and the air was barely breathable, but they could see daylight ahead. They were going to make it to the extraction point. Carlos Martinez, one of the mining engineers, had been keeping spirits up throughout the entire escape by creating jokes about their situation and leading the group in songs that helped them maintain their pace. His constant stream of humor had been a lifeline for everyone, especially the children who were struggling with fear and exhaustion. As they climbed toward the surface, Carlos noticed that the cave system was becoming increasingly unstable. The volcanic activity was reaching its peak and the ground shook with continuous tremors that threatened to bring down the remaining rock formations. "Everyone keep moving," Carlos called out. "We're almost there. I can smell the sweet scent of not being cooked alive." A massive tremor shook the cave system and brought down a shower of rocks and debris. The group pressed forward through the falling stone, but Carlos realized that the main support pillar for this section was about to collapse. If it fell, it would seal the cave entrance and trap everyone inside. Without hesitation, Carlos positioned himself against the failing support and used his own strength to hold it in place while the others escaped. His engineering knowledge told him exactly how much pressure the rock formation could withstand and how long he could keep it stable. "Carlos, what are you doing?" Jake shouted as he realized what was happening. "Buying you time," Carlos replied, straining against the massive weight of stone. "This pillar needs to stay up for about 2 more minutes while everyone gets out. We can find another way." "There is no other way," Carlos said. "And besides, I always wanted to hold up a mountain. It's going on my resume." Even while literally holding up a collapsing cave system, Carlos Martinez was making jokes and thinking about others first. He maintained his position until every single person had escaped to safety, then let the rocks fall as the cave system collapsed behind them. When the survivors finally reached the surface, they found rescue ships waiting exactly where Amy Rodriguez had predicted. The emergency signals had gotten through the atmospheric interference and the galactic community had responded with typical efficiency. But the rescue ships found more than just survivors. They found human beings who had faced extinction with courage, humor, and an unbreakable commitment to each other. They found a species that had proven something remarkable about the nature of strength and survival. Tar stood on the rocky surface of Kepler 442b and watched the humans board the rescue ships. They were dirty, exhausted, and marked by their ordeal. They had lost friends and colleagues to the disaster. They had been through experiences that would have broken most species, but they were still laughing, still supporting each other, still finding reasons to hope and smile and plan for the future. They talked about Joe Parker and Helen Gray and Carlos Martinez as heroes who had shown the best of human nature. They made plans to honor their sacrifice and to continue the work they had been doing. Captain Maria Santos of the rescue ship approached Zektar as he prepared to file his final report. "Observer Zektar," she said, "I understand you've been studying human defensive capabilities." "Yes," Zektar replied, "though I think I may have misunderstood what I was supposed to be observing." "How so?" Zektar looked back at the smoking volcano that had tried and failed to break the human spirit.